Hi everyone, Richard here at Calvin Wazoo, and as you heard from the intro track that I played for you, we're going to be talking about Charles Mingus, one of my favorite jazz composers and innovators. And that particular track you heard comes from this album, The Clown. It is from the Reincarnation of a Lovebird. It's the sax solo. I'll talk a little more about this, but just, a little background about Charles Mingus. He was a bit of a tortured soul. He was contentious. He was sometimes explosive, and knew that about himself. There was, for example, a time that I think they mentioned it in the background notes of this, that there was a racist heckler at one of the shows that was just really pressing Mingus's buttons, and he walked off the stage. But the racist guy followed him. And so I guess backstage he punched the guy out. Mingus punched the guy out because he feared that he was going to be attacked by him. He had some mental health issues, apparently. In fact, in one of the notes, or I should say the album notes from let's see, it's from The Black Saint and the Sinner Lady. Some of those notes were written by his psychiatrist. And he had at least one separation or divorce, which he, like many artists, turned into a great album. The hardship and the anguish that he was experiencing at that time. He played with a lot of great musicians, and there were plenty of musicians who also did posthumous homages to him, because he certainly was a major influence in the jazz circuit and just an incredible player and orchestrator. He had a core group of people that he played with, but some people, they didn't come right out and say what the reason was. But, Eric Dolphy and Mingus had a parting of ways, just before Dolphy died, in fact. And Dolphy wanted to go back to Europe, and Mingus was trying to convince him to stay. And he didn't, and so Dolphy went and then died as soon as he arrived, after slipping into a diabetic coma. And then in 1977, Mingus was diagnosed with ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease, and he quickly deteriorated. He was confined to a wheelchair, and then 2 years later, 1979, he died in Cuernavaca, Mexico. So, an amazing life, and a life filled with struggle, tension, but man, what music. So the first record, that I am showing is this one, The Clown. This was released in 1957. My copy is a 2001 mono reissue. It's considered his second masterpiece, all right, because this came out shortly after let me try to pronounce this. Pithecanthropus erectus, all right, which was, I don't have a copy of that, but a fantastic album that came out in 1956. This one came out in 1957. We've got Curtis Porter on here on alto and tenor sax, Jimmy Nepper, who played with Mingus for many, many years on trombone, Wade Legg on piano, and Danny Richmond on drums. We don't often hear Mingus, I mean, there are parts, where you can definitely hear his bass playing, but it isn't necessarily featured, front and center. And the opening track, the Haitian fight song, begins with a really killer bass riff. And then the whole song's got a very, very swinging mood. The Reincarnation of the Lovebird, which is the opening track that you heard, is an homage to Charlie Parker, also known as the Bird. And then Porter's sax playing on here, Porter's piano playing, right? Let me make sure I'm talking about the right people. No, Porter is playing sax, that's right. His sax playing is really, really amazing. It is just very smooth and crisp. The storyline on the clown is a vocalized part on the title track, and it's improvised by Gene, or maybe it's Jean Shepard, and so it's as I say, it's improvised. It's just immediately off the mark that he is telling this story about this clown, and basic storyline. It's very tragic in a way, and also comedic in a way, much like a clown, going through life of this just enduring pain just to be able to please an audience and make it laugh, even when that audience is constantly demanding more. Really, really nice piece, and the instrumentation that goes along with the narrative, really, really good. So yeah, this is a really, really solid album. But then we come up to, it's also got this interesting Atlantic label, but this is a reissue, so that label may not necessarily mean a whole lot. But then the next record we have is Ah-Um. All right. This is a really brilliant album, and it's probably his most accessible album. It's also his first release on Columbia. So we've got the Columbia 6i label. It was released in 1959, and my copy is a 2013 reissue. So on this particular lineup, we've got Mingus on bass, we've got John Handy on alto sax and clarinet, Shafi Hadi, who's also known as Curtis Porter, on alto and tenor sax, Danny Richmond on drums, Horace Parlin on piano, Booker Evan on tenor sax, Jimmy Nepper on trombone, and Willie Dennis on trombone. So the trombone players are playing on different songs. A little bigger band here, but there's a lot of classics. We've got, Better Get It in Your Soul, Goodbye Pork Pie Hat, which is an elegy for Lester Young, who died shortly before these sessions were recorded. So yeah, Young died in March of 1959, and the sessions for this recording were in May of 1959. Booker Evans playing on the Boogie Stop Shuffle is just really, really excellent. And Horace Parlin, the piano playing, he gives it this really aggressive swing treatment that's really, really quite sweet. Bird Calls really does evoke the image and sounds of birds twittering and chattering away all over the place, and it's more than likely it's an homage to Charlie Parker, known as the Bird. Then one of the most interesting songs, though, is probably Fables of Faubus, which is, and through many of his songs, in his pieces, Mingus would address things like racism. And that's what Fables of Faubus is all about. It's an attack on the segregationist Arkansas governor, Orville Faubus, who, stood in the way of integrating at Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas. There were lyrics to go with this, okay? But Columbia was really freaked out by that, and so when this was released, there are no vocals. But you can hear the vocals if you get Charles Mingus Presents Charles Mingus, which is a 1960 release, which I don't have. Really interesting, again, with the music with this Fables of Faubus, is you get these like mocking drones, and there's this real uptight theme that is repeated throughout the song. And at times the rhythms seem to almost stumble. It's just a really ingenious piece created to, take a shot at this racist governor. So then my next one is, this is a new pressing of the 1961 release, Mingus. And it's a 2023 release on the Candid label. I'll tell you, the Candid recordings are really, really excellent sounding. I mean, you've got Bernie Grunman doing the mastering. The pressings are sketchy, though. You're quite a few of them out there. Some of, not so much with this one, but with other Candid pressings that I have, you get this, what is called stitching, which is this kind of sound that will show up in different spots on the record. And it's a pressing flaw. It's got nothing to do with the recording or the engineering. It's just a bad pressing, and it's really frustrating. It happens a lot with newer pressings, that you'll get this stitching sound, in the recording. They spend all this time and the remastering, and they get really great people to do the remastering, and it sounds great. And then you get this shit coming out of the pressing plants. Really, really frustrating. But anyway, this is, it's a good album, but I'm sure some of the originals are probably very expensive. I mean, this is $26, these new reissues, so they're not that badly priced. But man, when you pick up one and it's got that stitching going on in the pressing, it's just frustrating as all hell. It's very short. There's only 3 tracks. Side 1 is all one track called MDM. And it is 3 musical themes stitched together throughout. There's MDM stands for Monk, Duke, and me, or Mingus. So you've got the theme from Monk's Straight No Chaser, and then Duke Ellington's theme from Main Stem, and then you have a Mingus theme from 51st Street Blues, and these are essentially stitched all the way through the piece, and then the players playing, off of these themes, really, really good. Dolphy's bass clarinet playing on this is just really outstanding. Stormy Weather, all right, the traditional song, Stormy Weather, is kind of deconstructed. And it's really quite, it's just different, and it's electric, even though there's no electric instrumentation. But it's just, you got Dolphy on this playing alto sax, and at times he's like bending the note like a guitar player will bend the note, but he's doing this on a saxophone. So I mean, you can hear him like, with wind instrument, whether it's brass or whether it's a woodwind instrument, you can do what's called tonguing the notes so that each note has a specific end so that they don't run together. You slur the notes so that, in one breath, you're playing all these notes without differentiating, without creating any kind of space between the notes. But he's like really bending the note. It's just really amazing to listen to him. And Ted Curson is just crazy good on the trumpet on that piece as well. Now, Lock 'Em Up. I mentioned about Mingus's troubled history. Lock 'Em Up is this reflection on an experience Mingus had. He was going through a rough patch, and he went to the infamous Bellevue Psychiatric Hospital, thinking that he could kind of walk in and talk to somebody there and then maybe get some on-the-spot counseling. But they ended up committing him. They hospitalized him against his will. So until the people were able to get him out, he was in the psychiatric hospital as a patient. And he, talks about somebody he never necessarily met or saw, but he could hear this person screaming all the time. And that left a really big impression. So Lock 'Em Up has got, it's just a lot of chaos going on with the music, but then Booker Ervin on the tenor sax brings some kind of order to that chaos with his own just really outlandish playing. It's really amazing. The needle, I'm going to do a needle drop for this also, but the one I'm going to do is from Stormy Weather during the Eric Dolphy solo. Really, I hope you get that kind of what I'm talking about with the way he kind of like is bending the note on a saxophone. Like how a guitar player will bend the note by bending the strings, on the neck. That's, a really amazing technique with a saxophone. The next one, this is my favorite Mingus album, and this Tijuana Moods. It's 1962 release. My copy is a 2014 WaxTime remaster reissue, and it was released in 1962, but the sessions are all from 1957. It's considered perhaps his best record, but it's something, it's just, I just love it, not because people think it's his best record. It was sort of recorded at the time, right on the heels of Pithecanthropus erectus. I have a hard time pronouncing that. Followed by The Clown. So this was, in 1957. So they held it. They didn't release it until 1962. But it is a musical reflection where he was hanging out in Tijuana, Mexico, after I think it was a divorce. I mean, he lost his wife either through some kind of separation or divorce or something like that. He was really depressed. He went down to Tijuana to forget, okay? But while he was there, the music and atmosphere, the lifestyle down there, you know, everything from, you know, the strippers and the hookers and the tequila and everything, he decided to do something musically with that experience, and that's what happened with Tijuana Moods. The frenzy and the chaos and the sensuality and the violence, they're all very, very well captured in this album. In fact, there's this moment during the song Isabel's Table Dance where Mingus is playing pizzicato on the bass, and his fingers are just frantically flying and plucking all over the place. And meanwhile, you've got these castanets going, clapping away like crazy. You know, it's just a really remarkable album. So, yeah, Tijuana Moods, and my favorite Mingus album. Now, the next one is, I mean, it's just another fantastic album. Maybe it is truly his, you know, his best recording. Certainly one critic thought it was. And that was this here, The Black Saint and the Sinner Lady from 1963. My copy is a 2015 remaster. So in the All Music Guide, Steve Huey, this is his opening sentence, okay, in his review. The Black Saint and the Sinner Lady is one of the greatest achievements in orchestration by any composer in jazz history. Boom, right off the top. And it really is just a really incredible album. It is a 6-part ballet. So each of the pieces are about, you know, different dancers. The opening track combines 3 different tempos that are repeated throughout not just that piece, but throughout the other pieces as well. And the other cool thing about this recording is it's got Barry sax. I mean, I love Barry sax. The orchestra, it's the orchestra. Well, you know, the players on this, there's quite a few. And they did a lot of playing live, but you've got 2 trumpets with Rolf Erickson, Richard Williams, and then trombone is Quentin Jackson. Tuba is Don Butterfield. Soprano, baritone, saxophones, and flute is Jerome Richardson. Tenor sax and flute is Dick Hafer. Alto sax is Charles Mariano. Piano is Jackie Byard. And guitar is Jay Berliner. And then bass and then piano is Charlie Mingus, and drums Danny Richmond. I mean, all right, so that's quite a lineup. And you know, they would at the Village Vanguard, they would do a lot of shows, and Mingus, you know, would get them to expand more and go in different directions, you know, with each of these set pieces to the ballet. But in the studio, you know, he had a script to follow. And this is also reportedly the first jazz album to rely on overdubbing. It's a wonderful recording. And so I got a needle drop for you, which is from the second track. It's called the Duet Solo Dancers. So I will play that for you. really interesting and superb and fantastic, and it's just so Mingus. All right, so now another really good one. Doesn't get a whole lot of respect, but it's Shoes of the Fisherman's Wife. Now, this was a posthumous release, okay? Mingus died in 1979. This was released in 1988. But it is the various collaborations that were recorded much earlier, and that includes sessions from 1959. The majority of the sessions were from 1959. The session that produced the title song, which is actually, the title song is slightly longer than the actual title, and that is The Shoes of the Fisherman's Wife Are Some Jive-Ass Slippers. That is from a 1971 session. But yeah, very solid, wonderful album. First time I got it was, in fact, on CD. But yeah, it's on vinyl as well. And it's also another one with a big band. I mean, for the title track, the Shoes of the Fisherman's Wife Are Some Jive-Ass Slippers, that track includes a 17-piece band. Yeah, and while the other pieces are smaller, less than 10, but most of them are quintets or sextets, maybe even a septet in there. But yeah, really big band, 17-piece band with the title track. But great record, really enjoyed this one. Now, my last one isn't really Mingus, not Charles Mingus per se. What it is the Mingus Sounds of Love. This is the Mingus Dynasty. This is an Italian pressing from 1988. And what it is, this is a collection of posthumous collaborations that are with musicians that had played with Mingus. And it's one of the better releases of the various ones that came out. Because, of course, if you're playing Mingus, one of the things that does make a Mingus piece, is his bass playing, and it's distinctive. And, you don't quite get that, but you do get some really great covers and reinterpretations of some Mingus classics, such as Isabel's Table Dance, and The Eye of the Hurricane. What are some of the others? Caroline. This particular group of the Mingus Dynasty includes Randy Brecker on trumpet, Jimmy Knepper, who has played a lot with him, trombone, and also the musical director. You got James Newton on flute, Craig Handy on tenor sax, Roland Hanna on piano, Reggie Johnson on bass, Danny Richmond on drums, on all of them except for one composition. And that other composition is Kenny Washington, who plays drums. So yeah, it's not Mingus, but it's Mingus homage, Mingus covers, I guess you could say. So I decided to include that also with this particular pressing. So that's what I have in my collection for Charles Mingus. As I say, a absolutely fantastic orchestrator, musician, composer, but also a troubled man who had some issues that at times he was able to contain and manage, and at other times he was unable to contain and manage. But everyone pretty much that I can tell who ever played with him was able to see the genius and experience the genius and go, get beyond that, some of the prickliness perhaps of his personality that sometimes would manifest. Leave a comment in the Down Under about your own favorite Mingus releases. or anything else, you know, about Mingus you may know about. Love getting the comments. You can find me on Instagram at newsdude76. That's NEWZDUDE76. I'm also on Facebook as Kelvin Wazoo. So you can look me up there, where I post not just my own videos, but other content, other video content, you know, and articles and things like that, all of a music nature. Hit that like button, even if you're already subscribed, because it does help with distribution of the content and getting it in front of more eyeballs. Really helps out. So there you have it, Charles Mingus. I wonder who's going to be up next in this series. In the meantime, remember to pray for the people inside your head, for they won't be there when you're dead.